chat. What generation? All right, I see that we are live.
We are just not on LinkedIn. There we go. If at first you don't succeed, try again. We
Oh,
are ready.
hello, everyone. My name is Candace Miles. I am the founder and CEO of No Gap Consulting, where I empower Black millennial and Gen Z women who just stepped into leadership for the very first time. But I'm not just that. I am representing the millennials generation for this chat as we are lighting the torch. So those who are joining for the very first time, lighting the torch, what it is that where we are actually having conversations from generation to generation with different perspectives and lighting each other's torch. Outside of me representing the millennials, I am a founder, CEO. I'm also to a daughter, not a mother yet, a godmom. And as I always say all the time, somebody's son's future wife.
You crack me up when you say that. Awesome. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you guys for joining. My name is Cynthia Haley. I am representing the Gen X perspective as we talk about lighting the torch from one generation to the next and lighting each other's torch. I am the founder and CEO of Transition to Infinite Possibilities, and the CEO stands for Chief Energy Officer because I actually specialize in elevating people's careers, specifically corporate professionals, but I do it with a twist. I elevate your career, but I also help you elevate your energy because the two are so important to being successful in your careers and ultimately transitioning to infinite possibilities. So, before we dive into the topic, we do want to know, we're curious of your generation. If you are Gen
Yes.
X, drop it in. If you're Gen Z, drop it in. Millennials, even the
Millennials.
boomers. If we have any boomers on the call, let us know because we want to hear your perspective as well. So let's dive on into the topic for sake of time, right? For those who don't know, it is National Mental Health Awareness Month. We're still in the month of May and we're talking about mental health awareness. And one cause of workplace stress and anxiety is the fear of failure. And so we decided, we have a Gen X on the call. That's Rochelle. Thank you, Gen X, for joining us. Um, but we decided to discuss, is it a mistake or is it a lesson? And where do you draw the line? Because that fear of failure, and trying to figure out, can I make a mistake? Is it a mistake, or is this an opportunity to get the lesson, right? So to really get this conversation going, I thought, let's start with a vocabulary lesson, Candace.
Okay.
The fear of failure, there's actually a phobia for that. And I'm probably gonna mess it up, right? But it's called aticophobia. I'm gonna spell it. It's Atychiphobia, aticophobia. And that is truly the definition or the word coined for the fear of failure. And I'm gonna just tell you what Dave Ramsey said about it. It is the intense feeling of anxiety or danger around messing up, not measuring up, or being judged by other people for not accomplishing a goal.
Mm.
So let's talk about this, making a mistake versus a lesson, and that fear of having that fear of failure and how it causes so much angst and stress in the workplace sometimes. Candace, what are your thoughts? Have you experienced it or?
I have. Uh, I can definitely think about, I'm the leadership here. When I first got into leadership, there was this project that myself and one of my peers at one of the organizations I used to work for, we were assigned to do. But I am going to put a but in there. We were also doing, it was a startup, so we were also doing additional roles that were technically outside of our scope, but because of the way the job description was, it got slid in there. And so it was a huge cleanup we had to do. We missed it. We had got talked to, missed it again. My boss ended up taking us in and giving us basically saying, hey, this is a verbal.
Ooh.
Okay, got it. Months went down the line, and now we were in December and got pulled back in for the same exact conversation and got wrote up for it. And for me, I was like, it was just a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, look at the different, the different anomalies and factors that were there that caused it with the additional responsibilities that we had at the time, especially trying to juggling everything. And it really taught me a lesson. The lesson piece of it was to speak up.
That's important. That's
and not really knowing that, I can say that now.
Yeah.
Then in that moment, it was like I had a fear of, oh well, if I do it again, I'm gonna get rolled up. Like, am I gonna get verbally talked to and then rolled up at the end? A few months later for the same exact thing. It was literally the same exact thing that had happened. And when I say the same, it was the same situation. It wasn't a different situation where it happened again. It was the same situation where there was a mistake in me actually, my boss actually giving me a verbal when it should have been a written.
So it's almost like, I don't know why this sports analogy is coming in my head, but it's like when you fumble the ball, right? And you get a penalty. But in this case, it sounds like it was a fumble, but could it have been a teachable moment?
It could have.
Right? Like when you think of as a leader in an organization, when you have an employee who makes a mistake, or maybe they had a typo, or maybe they said something incorrectly to a customer, or maybe they submitted it 5 minutes late, whatever the case may be, there was a mistake that happened. Is it a teachable moment, or is it punitive? And in my opinion, that's where we go to where you draw the line, right? Did it cause reputational risk? Did it cause financial risk? Was there exposure? Was there anything legally imposed by that mistake? Are there huge factors in play? And if not, even if it is, it still can be a teachable moment. And as a leader, you have to know how to put that hat on, have the conversation, and actually coach your employees. I think oftentimes it's easier to, punish, right? And just say you were wrong versus actually coaching an employee on what to do, why it's important to do it that way. As I learned early in leadership, that you don't just tell a person, go do it, go do it, go do it. Help them understand the why behind it, and they're likely to remember it more the next time. But it happens, and that fear, what you experienced, it sounds like it created a level of angst.
Yeah, I was young, early 30s. I'm like, at that point, I was early 30s, and it was a new management team. I think we've talked about this before, where I had a whole new management team come in, and it was like everybody already felt like when this person walked in the room, you had to walk on eggshells, because the whole energy just shifted when they came in the room. And so now I have something on paper that's going to be forever in my file of me making a mistake. And it's like, I think you hit something right on the head where you said like providing the why. So there was never any explanation providing like, hey, this is what we need to do. I need you guys to do it, and here is why.
Mm-hmm.
And so without that why, it just, we just assume like, okay, it's just an Excel sheet. We just got to go through it, make sure we clean it up, et cetera, et cetera. But it ended up having more on the back end, which is what resulted into the write up.
Yeah, yeah. I always would tell people, you got to connect the why. Connect things to, make it purposeful. If you don't understand it, you have the likelihood to make that same mistake because you don't understand the downstream impacts to it, right? But at the end of the day, give people some grace, right? There was a book, and I shared it with you, and I'll share it with everyone else. It's a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. I'm gonna hold it up real quick. So there's this book.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it. Ray Dalio. And he wrote in the book, there's a chapter in here that says, create a culture in which it is okay to make mistakes and unacceptable not to learn from them. So, that's where that accountability in my mind, it comes on both ends of the spectrum, right? You make the mistake, you own it. You now reframe your mindset like, okay, that happened, but it's not the end of the world. I'm going to understand the why behind it, and I'm going to apply it the next time. As a leader, you own it. You help the employee understand what happened. You coach them on the why. You coach them on what's the right thing to do. Give them the resources and help them move the needle. But don't stay stuck in that place, because if you stay stuck, you got fear, you got anxiety, you got stress just bubbling up over and over and over again until you could just implode, right? And that leads to the burnout. That leads to overwhelm. That leads to sleepless nights because now you can't rest because you're worried about what's going to happen the next day.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like, so for you to sit there and talk about like the culture.
Mm-hmm.
For me, obviously, there is a shift in the culture happening, especially with the evolution of AI, and even from generations to generations, the way that mistakes are viewed. How do you think, like, when it comes to balancing or allowing your team to make those mistakes for growth while assuring that accountability and progress? Because that accountability and progress, I really want to get emphasis on that. Especially the accountability piece, like it's starting to shift where there's people that is less accountable, but then complaining or pointing the finger at others about their progress.
I'm going to lean in on that one and say I always go back to goals. Set an expectation. If you don't know the goal, that's even in life. If you don't know the goal you're trying to reach or the target you're trying to get to, and you fumble along the way, you don't realize how far you are from your goal if you're not held accountable. If you keep fumbling and you're not being held accountable to that, meaning, all right, if you had a goal to reach, I'm gonna make this up, let's say 95% quality, right? Mm-hmm. But your error rate keeps increasing and you're not learning. Then the manager's giving you the tools, you're getting the resources, and you're not learning. That's where the accountability comes into play in my mind, where there's a goal that has been set, there are expectations that have been set, everyone understands it, you're being measured and held to it, and you're transparent in that. You, the leader, the team, everyone's transparent in what the target is. I hope I'm getting to where you're going with that question. But ultimately, I feel like there has to be goals, there has to be transparency, and there has to also be the right level of resources and tools to support that goal.
See, and I'm going to take a page out of the Urban Dictionary. It talks about this. Let's just be honest. Soft life era that's happening right now. That's also too in management. Like that's happening where everyone is so trying to people please when it comes to their teams, to not offend, because there's so much, You know, and leadership, we get canceled too. We may not be on social media, but we can get canceled too. Where now what it looks like in corporate world is that your team ain't listening to you. Your team doesn't respect you, you know, and because that soft life leadership, I do feel like that is starting to become more common because of all, like, everything that society is now emerging into. So like that accountability when it comes to the goals, I can come and I can speak with you and I can talk to you in your language. But how does, you know, when it comes to me talking to you, holding you accountable for making a mistake and you not progressing, like how how do you do that to hold them accountable for making the mistake without the offense happening?
Yeah, I think the missing link is relationship building.
That
Right. And so when you don't build a relationship, and that's not saying get personal, right? Like know your intimate details about somebody's life at home or outside of work. But there is a connection point that you need to make with as a leadership team, as a leader to employee, and building that relationship, right? In order to gain the trust, to gain the respect, so that when you give that feedback, or you even as a leader receive the feedback to help to even understand why they made the mistake, right? The tension is reduced when you have a stronger relationship. So you have to invest in doing that. That's my opinion. I think you need to invest in actually building a relationship. And oftentimes that's the missing piece. Too often people go in and just ready to throw the hammer, and then they feel like, oh, my team sucks. My team just keeps making mistakes. No, they don't know you. They don't trust you. They don't respect you because you're not building a relationship with them. You're not helping them. You're not coaching them. You're not giving them tools and resources. So all you see are failures. You don't see opportunity.
True. Yeah, because I like you said with the relationship, and sometimes that relationship building comes with there being time where it's uncomfortable. And it's going to have to be uncomfortable sometimes. And I think sometimes when it comes to leaders, like I remember about, like, and to me, I view it as a mistake. And I think we talked about this situation where a leader was in the sense of passing the baton from one employee, bringing them, transferring over to my team. But the conversation that we talked about where they actually, the mistake that happened was, hey, you're still at work. You can't get your hair done. You're at work in training at that. So, you know, that's a mistake. And it's also a lesson, you know, to be learned in that sense. But because that comfortability, that relationship building that you were just mentioning, it wasn't there. It was passed on and saying like, oh, well, so-and-so said.
So you got a hand-me-down.
Yes.
But even in that, it's a teachable moment, right?
It's a teachable
Believe it or not, and if I remember in this story, it was a younger generation.
It was. Sorry, Gen Xers.
And new entrants into the workforce. Honestly, I think we talked about it in the last episode about the whole topic around workplace etiquette. While there's some negative connotation to it, there's still some upside to it. Just knowing just some common basic fundamentals of operating in the workplace to where you are learning and growing and developing. So when you make a mistake, you have someone that's a coach that is your leader who's going to help you get to the finish line. Yeah. So, but then I'm going to put a twist on this. So something else I heard, or I have heard, and I have experienced as well amongst teams. Let's say you make the mistake, right? Your peer observes the mistake, and your peer goes to the boss to tattle.
Ooh, my blood pressure just
I
went up.
call it tattletaling. So it was a mistake. Your peer didn't say, hey, Candace, I noticed that you did X. Did you need help? Do you understand? Instead, the peer went to tattletale. How do you handle that one as a leader? The mistake and making it a teachable moment for both parties.
So for I'm like, you go off. I'm not just playing. You take a breather for sure, because it's like, you could have came and talked to me. So for me in that situation, I would definitely approach my peer, and just let them know, like, hey, if anything that I'm doing, especially if there's a mistake, I would prefer for you to come to me, unless you see that I continue to do it, then I understand for you to escalate it. But to have like a real heart to heart conversation with your peer, because that's really like you and your peer, you guys should be looking out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Teamwork,
Right?
team work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we talked about last time, where the hybrid. At one point, we talked about like how people can't really manage in the hybrid, but going to them. But on the flip side of it, on the flip side of it, I would definitely speak with like my boss, depending on how they would deliver it to me regarding. I would accept it from them for sure. Understanding that, okay, yes, I made this mistake. I wouldn't try to plead my case, because if they're coming to me, they're obviously coming to me because it was brought to their attention. But I think that really the biggest thing is making that relationship, like you mentioned earlier, that connection with your peer and having a very transparent conversation. Now, if they continue to do it, it may result in me having a teachable moment for them by me doing the same thing, where it's like, hey, I understand if my boss keeps coming to me about issues that's being brought to their attention. However, give me the opportunity to fix it.
Yeah. But there's also a concept of managing up, because not everything your boss brings to you is valid.
True.
There may be it may be valid, but there may also be an opportunity in that. And it's like, were you properly trained? Is the team properly staffed to handle the volume? Is that what led to the mistake? What do the 5 whys? Why did it happen? What could have been done different? Or did you have the right resources to help you? Was it day 2 of your training? You know what I mean? Like, challenge in a way that is going to lead to a good outcome for everybody. It's a teachable moment. So instead of the leader chastising you and now making it a toxic work environment, challenge and say, in order to thrive, this is what you need. In order to thrive, I would prefer we all have this conversation. Or maybe this is a topic we should talk about in a team meeting. If it keeps happening, it depends. It's all depends on the circumstances, but there may be other ways to go about it. But ultimately it lands in that whole workplace stress and anxiety. I agree. We have a comment in, and just to make sure people see it or hear it, it's the leader should encourage the peer to go to their peer. So the next time the peer will know to work with that peer instead of coming to the leader. The leader has to foster teamwork. Absolutely, 100%. It reminds me of a leader I had once that I really admired, Tony Garcia. And if anybody from TIAA is on, where I used to work many years ago, you all know who this man is. And the one thing that he always said was, he was the CEO of the life insurance company, but was very close to employees. And he would say, don't bring it to me if you haven't at least attempted to work it out together. So I know we're kind of veering off topic a little bit, but it's like, if you made a mistake in someone else's eyes, have that conversation and don't feel like you have to run to the boss. Every time there's a lesson in it somewhere.
Yeah, because and like she just mentioned in the comments, it is the responsibility of the leader for them to cultivate that teamwork perspective, especially when you have new leaders coming in. The only thing that they have, their mindset is like, oh, when there's an issue, I've been trained to bring it to my boss.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't, like, even at that teamwork level, for whatever reason, like there was a shift where it's like, hey, your team, your peers, that's family, protect family, don't throw them underneath the bus unless the issue has happened. That's constantly for me, with my team. I constantly encourage them to be like, hey, work together, and if you can't, then I can come in and help mitigate if I need to, but you ideally want to bring that to the person's attention if you haven't already.
Absolutely. And
Versus putting it on me for me to do that work, because that's where the accountability comes from too, and how they progress when it comes to teamwork.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, as we get ready to come to an end, I have personally experienced it as well in terms of that fear culture, or that toxic culture where it's like if you do something wrong, you're going to be penalized immediately. Or is it really even wrong? It's just wrong in their eyes. Sometimes it's not even a true mistake. It's just viewed as a mistake in their eyes because it wasn't done as they would have done it, right? And that type of environment, that culture, it really affected me in my health at one point in time several years ago, to the point where I was out after almost 20 years of working and never going out on disability. I had to go out from stress and anxiety. It was affecting me to a point where I could not function, at home or at work. And I share that because I know there are people who struggle with their mental health, who struggle with their physical health, all because of toxic work environments where there's fear created, where you can't make a mistake and you can't, skip a beat, or you can't fall back. I had someone reach out to me recently too, where they lost their job. They made a mistake in an Excel file and they lost their job. The good performer, I know this person personally, things happen, and that was just an out. That was an out for that leader to say, all right, sure, exit stage left, right? And I know we're getting close to time, and I really want to respect everyone's time. Candace and I could do this probably another 30 minutes, and we probably will. We stay on after the call sometimes. But nevertheless, we like to also make sure we get back to the essence of this series, which is lighting the torch and making sure that we share information that can actually light your torch, light each other's torch, to excel in your careers, excel in life. And so, Candace, how we start? You lighting the torch?
I'll go ahead. I'll start lighting the torch.
All right.
I will start lighting the torch from my generation. Let's flip the script. Let's flip the script when it comes to mistakes and lessons, and use it as it was, I guess, view it as if it was ingredients to a recipe for success. Instead of drawing the line, let's blur it.
Ooh, I like that.
Embrace the mishaps, sprinkle in some resilience, and just whip it up into whatever masterpiece that it's meant to become. Because it's always about remembering that it's not about being perfect. It's just about progressing.
I like that. I don't even know if I need to light the torch, but I'm going to anyway. But I'm really piggybacking off of a quote that I posted on LinkedIn, that Maya Angelou quoted, that says, "Forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it." And I think that's so important, to forgive yourself, give yourself grace, own it. Yes, it happened, if it truly happened, right? Get the lesson and start to apply it, build, learn to have conversations, and then reframe your mindset. take the pressure off yourself, loosen up your shoulders, and be good to you. Mistakes happen. It's okay. Forgive yourself, learn from it, and like Candace said, continue to progress and not worry about being perfect. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for sharing feedback. Thank you for telling us your generation. And again, we do this every first and third Thursday as the Lighting the Torch Fireside Chat series. And we hope you join us in 2 weeks. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.